Go ahead and run a sound check.
What's that?
Run a sound check.
Yeah,
ABC.
sound check. A, B, C, D, A, B, C.
Perfect.
You can hear me
Yes,
okay?
sir.
That's good?
Okay. So this kind of like AFN. Just make sure you're speaking into it.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because I'm going to be looking at you. That's going to be,
Whatever you're comfortable.
where's the,
Hold on real fast.
yeah.
78.6 FM Yoma Time. This is Positive Vibes with Winsome. I am truly excited to have a guest on today, Mr. Joel Foster. I've been trying to get him in here for about a week now. Excited to talk to him about it. Joel, and I gotta explain because we just threw him in here, so we gotta show him around a little bit. So Joel, real quick, we got the timer here.
Gotcha.
All right, so the mic you set up real good over there. You got any questions over there, man? I threw you in the booth.
No, I'm good.
All right, hey, this is game time. As you guys know, positive vibes. Today we're going to talk about a subject kind of ties into some of the things we've been talking about over the past couple of months. And today we're talking about the importance of self-reflection. You know, and you think about that, the words themselves, self-reflection. I got my team here from Toastmasters that's listening in. I'm so happy to have them here today. Hey, guys. The thing about self-reflection is, you know, a lot of people who say it, they think just looking in the mirror, taking a look at themselves, right?
Right.
And Joe, if you don't mind, before we jump into the subject, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself so the world knows?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I'm a clinical psychologist with a degree from the University of Kansas, PhD, several years ago. Worked in a number of different areas for many, many years. Right now, I'm a government employee as a clinical psychologist, but previously I've worked in community mental health and private practice, the VA hospital, and also most recently a few years back as an academic in the university. So kind of a broad range of experience and in different areas that I've experienced and worked in. So it's been really good. I really enjoy the breadth of psychology and the way in which it can be applied to a number of different areas of life. So yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about this topic.
That is
really
awesome.
Good.
So you when you got my text, what's the first thing you thought when you saw the words?
You know, it's a broad topic. It's one of the
Yeah.
things that you can go in a number of different directions on. I think it's certainly applicable. It's a good topic. It's something that we really need to talk about that a lot of people really need to hear. And I don't, you know, and here there's so much of our life is just kind of fast-paced and driven, and trying to kind of get from one thing to the next, and or move down our you know to-do list and check things off. That it is important to be able to carve out time and reflect and take an inventory about who we are and where we're headed, and make sure that we're living you know a life that is aligned with our values and that we're accomplishing our goals. Because if you don't, you wake up tomorrow and you know you're somewhere where you don't want to be.
Exactly. So the thing about you mentioned a couple of great things in there, carving out that time.
Right.
And I think some people we talk about self-care right now, you know, at our other job, we talk about a lot of how the different aspects of self-care. So when you're talking about taking care of yourself and finding that time to do a self-evaluation, why is that so important for folks?
Yeah, I mean, you know, so philosophers for hundreds, thousands of years have recognized that the importance of knowing yourself and having an idea of who you are and how you come across in the world and how people interact with you. That's absolutely critical, because there's so much. It's fascinating. People are really interesting, because it's not just the words that come out of our mouths that shape the environment around us, right? Or that we're shaped by the words that other people say, but really by the way, the inflection and the tone and what our intention, and so much of our personality is conveyed in our speech, and so really we are kind of the instrument that goes forth, and we are much more than just our words or our actions. Our personality pervades all of that, and our personality is one of those things that can really be one of those vehicles that can help us to succeed or help us to fail. And so we do need to have a good sense of what is this kind of this tool or this mechanism within ourselves.
Right.
So there's really great value in understanding yourself.
Right. We talk about strengths and weaknesses. And one thing I tell my folks too when we're teaching is, hey man, a weakness doesn't always have to be your weakness, but if you don't identify and you know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, you're never going to know which direction you need to grow.
Mm-hmm,
What do you think about that?
Yeah. I was reading something about that just the other day. The importance of knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then that allows you to kind of set the agenda for what you want to work on, obviously. But then it also gives you a recognition that there are things that you're really good at, and instead of getting kind of bogged down by that, really, I mean, by the fact that you've got things that you need to work on, and that browbeating. And beating yourself up about that.
Right.
Really taking your strengths and recognizing what you're good at and being able to accentuate those is really what helps people to be successful. And leadership models, theorists will talk about spending the majority of your time doing what you're good at and getting better at that, right? Rather than spending a lot of time trying to improve the things that you're maybe not so good at.
Right.
I mean, certainly you need to recognize what you're not good at and put some time towards that. But really, you can kind of spiral downward, right, into this period or state of negative reflection if you think too hard about that. So when I think about self-reflection, you can go in two different directions that are not so good with this. One area is that you can go into that you can sink down into a spiral of negativity when it comes to self-reflection. The other direction is that you just completely avoid it entirely, and then you have no sense of who you are or what's important to you and the direction that you're moving.
Because you're more focused on what you want to focus on based on the overall you. So if you're looking at the negative side and only focusing on, you're saying you'll dwell on that side.
Yeah, it's kind of like you can get into this navel gazing pattern that maybe is not very productive and fruitful.
Right.
I think too much. I think it's important when we talk about self-reflection that you always put it in the service of what you're contributing to the greater good of humanity or society, right? We should take inventory of ourselves because of how we affect other people in our life and how people are affected by us. And our personality is the instrument, like we just talked about, is the instrument that we use to accomplish things in our life. But it isn't an in and of itself. I mean, to settle into a self-focus where you just get lost in yourself is that's not the option. That's not where we want people to go.
Help me differentiate reflection versus dwelling.
Yeah. So I guess when I hear dwelling, I think more of that kind of obsessively self-focused to the point where you're not able to get out of yourself. You should take inventories and then recognize what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then turn that into action. But action without self-reflection is kind of just reckless, and it's directionless, right? Whereas excessive self-focus or dwelling or brooding is not good either, because it doesn't propel you to any kind of action.
Gotcha.
Right? But I think that sometimes we are in a bit of in society. Sometimes we hear this trend of kind of excessive self-focus, and I think we need to be kind of cautious of that. We need to be a little bit skeptical. Because again, we need to all self-focus should always be, or self-inventory should always be in the service of what we can then translate that into action, what we can do with that, how we can better ourselves, better society, how we can reach out to other people, what action we can take on behalf of humanity.
There's a lot of statements that you would hear, like especially last year. I think Buddha said it the best: dwell not in the faults and shortcomings of others, instead seek clarity about your own shortcomings. What do you think about that? Especially over the past year.
Yeah.
Everybody's focused on what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. It's been said many times that you really just need to think about what you can control, focus on that. That really is where you should be putting your efforts, and not on things that you can't control.
Right.
And then obviously one of the things that you can't necessarily control is the perception that other people have of you. So just again, not getting tied up in that.
Right.
We're not dwelling on ourselves and reflecting solely to please other people.
Right.
So again, it comes down to a balance with so many things, right? It's just it's everything in moderation.
Right.
Right.
So when you speak on, and you mentioned that a second ago, having that balance and having that reflection and not really focusing and taking inventory.
Yeah.
So we kind of model that we pull that away from self-awareness, right? Knowing yourself, understanding yourself, being able to trust yourself, and knowing basically what we say a lot, love yourself. But at the same time, so you're saying not to tip the scale to where you're overly obsessive in you, but just having a firm understanding of who you are and learning from your past and not dwelling on your past, right?
Right. You don't, definitely it's not healthy to dwell on your past,
Right.
particularly if there's not anything that you can learn from it that you haven't already. And so, so this is one of the fears that people have, and probably one of the things that keeps people from reflecting and taking inventory is that it's painful, you know, and that they're afraid of what they might see, and so they can kind of busy themselves with other things and with tasks and with to-do lists and trying to accomplish things because they don't want to stop and look inward, because that may be painful, and it is, and at times, and that's not a bad thing either. You know, I mean, we've as a society, we've gotten to the point where we abhor pain and suffering. There's a pill for everything, and we almost have this mistaken belief that we shouldn't have to suffer in any way. And so self-reflection can be painful, it can be difficult, but that's also then the first step towards changing your behavior. And we think about like in psychotherapy, models of change. There's a great model that's from Prochaska, Norcross, and De Clemente back in the 1980s, which was when I was in high school and college. And most good things come out of the 1980s. This is my belief, right? That's what I've learned. And so one of those is this model of change. It's called the trans-theoretical model of change.
Okay.
And it begins with what's called a pre-contemplative stage, where people are only going to change if they stop and they reflect and they get feedback about themselves and about their behavior. And so that's built into the model. You can't tell people, okay, do X, Y, and Z. You know, here's how you're going to get in shape, or here's how you're going to change your personality. Here's how you're going to be a better person. Here's how you're going to be, you know, you're not going to yell as much at your kids. Here are the specific things you need to change. People aren't necessarily ready for that, because if they haven't gone through kind of a progressive change model, there's various steps, you know, and one of those is that kind of pre-contemplative that leads to contemplative. That's where we are taking kind of inventory of our behavior. And a lot of that is not just based on what we see, but it's based on what other people see in us, or the feedback. And so when we talk about introspection, that's necessarily yoked to feedback from other people. It can't just be an insular self-introspection. We can't just put ourselves in the closet and just think and come to any kind of great truth.
Right. Yeah. And one of the words he said a second ago, which was key, and I think it's been echoed over the last couple of weeks from our other classes, is feedback. You can't change without feedback. You won't know what you're doing well, you're doing bad, you're doing right or wrong if you don't receive that feedback, right? And that's why we talk about connectedness. And having those folks that, you know, your battle buddies, the folks you know are going to be honest with you. And how important is that, sir? Like when you're going through your day and interacting and coming home, and how does that feedback tie into when you got that time with yourself?
You know, it's so good that you bring that up, because having social relationships is really integral to our health. It's fundamental to what it means to be a human. It's essential for healthy living. And so one of the difficulties really with social isolation and withdrawing from those meaningful contacts is that then you lose your frame of reference for judging your behavior. And we are social beings at our core. And so we really do rely on mirroring from other people. You know, I look at what you're doing, and that kind of gives me a mirror or a reference point to judge what I'm doing. And so without that, when we isolate from other people, then we don't have that mirror, we don't have that barometer, so to speak, right? And then we just become our worst enemy, and we spiral into depression and hopelessness. So really having other people in our lives that we can connect with in meaningful ways is so critical.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so important.
So we talked about connectedness, being able to have that feedback to bounce off other people. And as Joe just said, it's one of those it's important. I mean, it's every day important for us because we have to have that frame of reference and know what we're pulling our information from. I think it's important. I think a lot of people, you start seeing these memes, Joe, and I see it all the time, like the lone wolf, the lion on top of the mountain, and all these other crap about. And folks forget you can't do it alone. Hey, guess what, guys? We're coming up on a break. This is 78.6 FM, Positive Vibes of Winston. We'll be right back with Joel talking more about self-reflection.
Awesome. Thanks.
.6 FM Yomaton. Once again, this is Positive Vibes of Winsome. Back in the booth, back in the game. Hey, this is the first time Joel and I have been able to talk. We're getting our timing, our chemistry going. I want to have more and more. I kind of threw him in here. I said, hey, look, man, positive vibes, what we do. We have a genuine conversation just about whatever the topic is. Try not to preload because we just go natural. Basic rules, right? What are basic rules? If you guys been listening for the last year or so, no cursing, no religion, no politics. We just positive. So we're blessed to have Joe here taking time out of his day to come talk to us. I really appreciate it. And if you were just tuning in, we did a little bit of surface discussion about, the most important things about self-reflection, why self-reflection is important. Just to give you a quick overview, we talked about connectedness. We talked about having that frame of reference. We talked about individuals not spiraling, not tilting to one far or to the left or to the right on it, just to be able to take that time to learn from your past, understand yourself, learn yourself, know yourself. And these are ways to start trusting yourself and loving yourself if you've been doubting yourself. So the reason why I really wanted Joe here and what we're talking about now is a lot of people say the words self-reflection, but they don't tie them into what self-reflection really is. Self-reflection is just part of self-awareness, right? There's so many things. And of course, we pull that from emotional intelligence, being self-aware, motivation, and of course, the other topics that fall inside of the facets of self-awareness. And that's why I wanted to definitely have Joel on as an expert in his field. We definitely want to talk about why it's important to take just that one piece of emotional intelligence that we've been talking about, self-awareness, right? Self-reflection. We're tying it back into self-awareness now in this segment. So as we talk about self-awareness, right? How do you take time out? Are you taking the time out of the day to know you, to trust yourself, love yourself, know how you're engaging with other people, giving yourself that feedback, frame of reference, you going home and saying, hey, guess what? Tomorrow, I want to be better than today. And I think some people will fail to do that. They don't go back and actually, we're going to mention some things now, different ways to reflect on your day. What could you have done better? What could you have done different? What situations did you really have a miscue on? Right? And so we're going to talk about some ways to apply that to your day and different ways to approach being self-aware and, of course, reflecting on your day. Joe.
Yes,
sir.
Good stuff. Yeah, I think lots of different habits and strategies that people come up with, and nowadays with media, my gosh, and it can be good and bad, of course, right? But there's so many good apps out there that help people with this topic of taking that inventory, as we were talking about earlier, reflecting on what you've done over the last day and how you've responded, and then striving the next day to be a better version of yourself than you were the previous day. So
Right.
It's the how you go about doing that, of course, is going to vary from person to person. I think probably what is most important is to find something that works for you, that's achievable, right?
Right.
That is, you don't want to set your goals so high that you're going to fail. That's
Right.
Obviously not good. So take where you're at right now, because that's the only place you can begin from. And then don't compare yourself to other people as you go through on this journey, and then make small goals that you can accomplish and that you can break down and focus on a day-to-day basis. So I think just there's been kind of traditionally over hundreds of years the habit of just taking an inventory at the end of the day, reflecting on the key interactions that you had with other people. Take an inventory of your emotions, reflecting on that, trying to understand kind of how am I feeling and what's driving that, what interaction may have prompted a negative emotional state, and think about what you did, how you reacted, and are there things that you can improve on. And then take one small thing and try to apply that for the next day.
Right.
It may be I'm gonna do my best to not be so irritable, or I'm gonna be more patient with this person in my life. Or I think viewing these interactions that you have on a day-to-day basis as opportunities to grow really is you got to begin there.
Yeah.
I mean, because otherwise you're just going to frustrate the heck out of yourself. Because things don't go smoothly all the time. So we need to kind of embrace those difficulties and embrace those challenges. Yeah.
And then identifying what were actually challenges, not lying to ourselves, right? And I think that's one thing people don't do a lot is, okay, I could have did that differently. They just say, hey, this is what happened, what happens, that's a wrap. But they don't really take time to think about it, and if it comes up again or similar situations, how to react differently.
So they end up just repeating the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah. And so when you take that inventory, of course, you don't want to spiral downward like we talked about. So you don't want to build, you don't want to do the self-flagellation,
Right.
Or beating yourself up. But just taking an inventory of that, say, okay, I'm going to try to do better. I'm going to try to change that. I'm going to work on that this next week. And then kind of moving forward. I think one of the great contributions in this area from psychology is looking at your cognitions or your thoughts,
Right.
And recognizing that your thoughts are really powerful,
Yes.
and you can think yourself into despair, or you can think yourself into health. Recognizing kind of the relationship between your thoughts and your emotional state. Right. Your feelings and then your behavior. Just kind of becoming aware of that, I think is a huge step for people. And then oftentimes people will have distorted thoughts or negative cognitions, what we say, our cognitions are basically thoughts that are not accurate representations of reality.
Gotcha.
We're all like that,
Yeah.
like I should be perfect, this kind of thought
Right.
that someone might have, or I can never make a mistake, or, and see how this kind of negative and irrational thought pops up over and over.
Right.
And so then that becomes your your strategy. Then, okay, I'm going to work on this thought. I'm going to work on shaping that thought or changing that thought, making it more aligned with reality.
So the good thing about journaling too, right? We talk about different ways to apply. I've heard about shaping and reshaping.
Okay.
So they say you go in, you write things down, and then you wake up, you look at things you wrote down, and then you kind of have that mindset of reshaping the next day, right? To where you're not going to make the same mistakes or do the same things over. You're kind of shaping what you want to do differently. And it's like a constant, I guess I wouldn't say progression, but improvement on yourself, like self-improvement. Yeah. Is that tracking? Is that a good plan for some folks?
Yeah, I think you can do that. You could write that down like you're talking about, or you can kind of rehearse that in your mind.
Gotcha.
And particularly thinking about areas where you're vulnerable, or areas where you're most likely to have difficulties.
Right.
Rehearsing that in your mind, just like you would get ready to, for for a soccer game or something
Yep.
like that. You know, you're thinking through what your strategy is. I used to play a lot of racquetball, and I would, you know, think about how I'm hitting the ball and what my stroke looks like, and how,
Right.
you know, so you're doing that with your day-to-day life.
Right.
You know, you're envisioning yourself going into work, and you're meeting this person, and you know, what are you going to be feeling at that moment? You know, this is the guy that you really don't like, and you have difficulty. You know, how are you going to greet that person differently this time? So you anticipate, so that when you're in the midst of that moment, you're not caught off guard.
Right.
You're caught off guard, then you know you're going to rely on your habits, and then it's difficult to change things. So definitely journaling is a great thing. You know, one way of journaling is to, as you're describing it, another way of doing it is just to take like 10-15 minutes a day in an unedited form, just write down your thoughts and feelings, and then just throw it away.
Nice.
And not keep it. And one of the things that does is that distances you from intense emotions. And this is one of the most important things. One of the biggest contributions from psychology is this idea of distancing yourself from your intense emotional experiences, so that you could accept them a little bit more. This is kind of a radical acceptance approach. Instead of always trying to force or change your emotions, your feelings, or change situations that you can't change,
Right.
but just radically kind of accepting them. So journaling or writing something down and just throwing it away is a way of distancing yourself.
Nice. Letting it go.
Letting it go. So you know, another analogy that I use with people when I'm seeing patients is to have a coffee table in my office and just talk with them about, you know, putting their emotions on the table, and let's just take a look at it and examine it from this angle and that angle.
Nice.
And so getting because we get so wrapped up into, I feel I have, you know, sensitive feelings, or you know, this person hurt me. They can't do. We get so wrapped up in our emotions and our feelings, and so protective of those, that we really need to distance ourselves a little bit. If we can accept that there are struggles and hardships and challenges, we're going to be in a much better position.
Got it. Perspective.
Nice. Adaptation.
Adapting.
Yes.
All these words, you guys hear you dropping these jewels if you ain't been checking it out. Look, perception, adaptation, and a lot of things, journaling, different ways to journal. Radical, what do you call it, sir? Radical?
Yeah, like radical acceptance.
Radical
emotional
acceptance. Let it go.
Yeah.
Don't hold on to it.
You know, I think about the analogy I use is, man, you know, right now, I'm getting a little bit hungry. I'd love to get some sushi. You know, the sushi go round.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, all kinds of different sushi. You watch the plates, they come and they go, and some they look really good, and some not so good, right? And you don't have to take any of them. You can just watch it. And so you can have that passive, kind of removed approach to your emotions.
Nice.
Just watching them come and go. I'm feeling this. I'm noticing that. I don't have to react to it. I don't have to, you know, I don't have to take the sushi. I can just let it pass. So again, the more that we can kind of separate ourselves a bit from our emotions, then easier we will be at tolerating things. And instead of frustrating ourselves so much trying to change things, so that acceptance it runs a little bit counter to what we've been talking about, but it's another tool that people can use at the same time. So in other words, you can still take that acceptance and that distant approach to your emotions, and at the same time try to work on things.
Right.
But being able to kind of accept things, that gives you a different perspective, right?
Yes. And I think that's a key word too, and it's so clear. Human resources. Some of the folks, your supervisors will teach you, right? They'll say, hey, if you're upset and you want to send an angry email, type it up.
There you go.
Don't send it. Go ahead, re-edit it, look at it again. Don't send it.
Yeah.
And
get up, go get a cup of coffee, come back.
and at different times, it literally will start shrinking down or chopping up and changing over time. It's because you're allowing yourself to accept the situation. You're not just going full-fledged emotional. And I love that because I've done that. You know, I've accidentally sent the first version. I tried to recall.
It's almost always a mistake, right?
I was like, why did I push send? Why? It's this habit. But I think that's awesome. I think some of the concepts that you just presented, especially perspective, is brilliant. And then, of course, letting go. 78.6 FM. We'll be right back. 78.6 FM Yomaton. This is Positive Vibes with Winsome. I think that's my name, right?
I think
Winsome. In case you guys didn't know, I have a special guest today, Joel Foster, taking his time out to come talk to us today. We spent the first 2 segments talking about self-reflection. We rolled that into self-awareness. We started talking about some different ways to apply that in the last segment. In case you guys didn't know, the third segment is always dedicated to the Air Force Wounded Warrior Wellness and Resiliency Team. One of the things we spoke on, again, is journaling. We talked about different ways to journal, tell your story. One thing that Joel mentioned a little bit ago, which was amazing, and I love it, was throw it away, let it go. You know, one of the radical ways to acceptance. Am I tracking that right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And so we talk about journaling, and I'm going to the page now to see what the Wounded Warrior has been talking about this week.
Okay,
but
yeah.
We talk about journaling now. I know Armando, just shout out to you, brother, has been sending out a lot of different ways to journal. One thing I want to talk to you, Joel, about, and this is, we didn't promise you guys we don't rehearse this stuff. I throw it. Is when you're journaling for gratitude.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things that we talked about was writing down 3 things at night, waking up and looking at those same 3 things and starting your day off with gratitude.
That's great, yeah.
And the way that he was trying to capture it was sometimes we go to bed, you got things in your heart, things in your mind, kind of like what Joel mentioned, you let it go when you're journaling, right? You put all your thoughts in there so you don't have those anxieties sitting with you when you go to sleep. Then if you're writing down 3 things you're grateful for and you wake up, you're looking at things that were good about your day. You're starting your day off with gratitude and you're going, and that's just the starter. What do you think about that, Joe?
Yeah, that's so much easier said than done. If we could all be more grateful, the world would be such a better place. But it's a challenge because, there's this kind of negative, we kind of get pulled into the negative. It kind of makes sense when you think about it from a cognitive psychology perspective. Things that are not going well, things that are broken, things that are a mess, things that are damaged. These things, they stand out more. We see them, we notice them. They're more salient, and so our attention is drawn to them. So it's a natural tendency, but we gotta resist that. And if we can resist that, and if we can practice more gratitude, then that will oftentimes change the way that we feel. It will cover up so much negativity, right?
Right.
Because we get so wrapped up, to go back to what we were talking about a minute ago, we get so wrapped up in our intense emotions at that moment. And we need to remember that emotions come and go, and that they're not always intense, and if we can just kind of ride them out, like you're saying, step away from things for a little while, distract ourselves from how we feel at that moment, then we're going to be in a much better position. But I like that what you just are describing, developing kind of a habit of being grateful for those things in our life is definitely one way to do that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Another thing that they mentioned too was affirmations. Jen, this is a shout out to you. This is Jennifer Howden, Air Force Wounded Warrior Wellness and Resiliency Team. She asked the team, she said, "Hey, good morning. What are some of your daily affirmations?" Right? Hers was be strong like coffee. Right? So having those affirmations in the morning and giving yourself that boost.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, they don't do that. They just go jumping blindly into the day. Joe, what's an important reason to start your day off with positive affirmation?
Yeah, so much of what of the rest of your day is going to be shaped by how you begin. Just like everybody knows you should have breakfast in the morning, right?
Yes.
You should always eat, because then you're going to make better healthy choices throughout the day, right? So we do get kind of wrapped up into the rush and to the hurry, and so building some space and time into our daily routine to be able to begin that way is a good thing. And so people do, I encourage people to do things like exercise can help you with that, deep breathing, meditation, yoga, prayer, all of those things. It can kind of center you, even if it's just a few minutes, and kind of think through, what are the most important things that I need to do today? What is the theme of my day? What is the one quality that I'm going to try to really work on today? And then doing the same thing at the end of the day. What am I most proud of? What do I feel best about? What am I frustrated with? So again, having that inventory, kind of bookending your day like that is a great habit.
Yep.
And it doesn't take much. I mean, we're
Right.
talking like 5 minutes.
Exactly.
But again, it's easier said than done. So people get so wrapped up, right, into the busyness of our day and the to-do lists, and we're so kind of saturated with tasks.
Yep.
It's difficult to pull away, but really much needed.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
If you guys didn't hear what he said a second ago, we get busy, right? Life gets in the way. It's easier said than done. But to chalk out 5 minutes in the morning, chalk out a few minutes at night, and like Joe mentioned, take inventory. Joe, that's just powerful in itself, right? To be able to take inventory of your day. Imagine if you start taking inventory of your morning, and then you start rolling into starting to take inventory of your night. Then you start taking inventory of your week. Then you start taking inventory. You see where I'm going with this? You can start taking inventory for your life, man, and making yourself better. It's this Positive Vibes, 78.6 FM, Positive Vibes of Winsome. I have a special guest here with me. We're talking about taking inventory, journaling, positive affirmation. These are all things. I love having Joel in the booth with me so he can hear. This is the groove. This is the vibe. So what are you doing, and how are you taking time out for you? Are you letting life get in the way? Are you too busy? Or are you finding time to start, like he mentioned, the bookends, right? Start your morning off with positive affirmation. Start your night off or end your night with taking inventory of your day. Roll it over, and then you get that cycle of events going. Guess what? It's like repetition, right? You start practicing this part of your day. You build it into your morning. You build it into your evening. Another person said, I look better in orange. That was the affirmation. Or, I don't look better in orange, should I say. Keep them out of jail, right? Don't beat nobody up. I am confident. These are some of the things that the folks in the Air Force Wounded Warriors said, Joe.
It's good.
I am confident. I am worthy. What I always say, you guys have heard me say this before, I am, I can, and I will. That's mine.
It's good.
So we're sharing that affirmations. Joe, do you have an affirmation that you tell yourself in the morning before you get to go to work?
Yeah, I mean, something along the lines of I can do this. I've got the, because there's so many things that challenge you on a day-to-day basis, and a lot of that is, are new things that catch us off guard, and we need to build that confidence. It's so easy to be broken down by the challenges of life. So I think for me, it's I can do this. Maybe not because I've done it before, but because I've done other things like this. And so, and I think about, well, I've accomplished this and I've accomplished that, and well, of course I can do this other thing,
I love
and
that.
we just, we need to think about all the things that we've accomplished and the challenges that we've had, and be able to say, okay, those are skills that I practiced in this particular domain of life.
Yep.
They're transferable to this other domain, even though I've never experienced it and encountered it. Yep. So helps give me kind of confidence.
I can do this.
Yeah.
That's fresh. Hey guys, listen to it. I can do this. The ones you said, I don't look good in orange. I like that one too. Yeah. But Joe, I'm gonna give you a quick back history. We got a few minutes left, man. Joe was speaking to a group. This is where I met him. And you guys know I do this every week. I've been doing this for a couple years, speaking positive vibes. And since my life's led me in this direction. But when I heard Joe speak, I'm telling y'all 100%, I was moved. And he spoke to the group, and I immediately grabbed him. I said, hey, sir, do me a favor. I need you to say similar anything along those lines to my team. And he blessed us with his time again to my crew, and they were moved. And so it's an honor, Joe. If I haven't told you, ladies and gentlemen, Joe Foster again, our special guest today. And I threw him in the booth. I'm just going to give you guys heads up. I hit him up last minute. We were supposed to do this a few weeks ago, and I hit him up this week. And I just threw the topic at him. I said, this is what I want to talk about. I want to cover it. Because we've been chopping up emotional intelligence, I want to cover self-awareness. But I snuck in self-reflection because it just kind of branches off of self-awareness, right? So Joe gave us his time, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much, Joe.
My pleasure.
Hey, man, it's been a long time since I've sat back, unless I'm watching some old YouTube videos of somebody speaking. This man was up on stage, boy. Woo! I was like, hey, I'm trying to tell you. So what we did and what we've been doing, again, Air Force Wounded Warrior Wellness and Resiliency Team, we just did the virtual care event to the folks that were logged in and listening and heard my story. Thank you for taking the time out to hear my long-winded story. Now it was on like 20 minutes. Was it an hour? Echo, whatever time you gave me, thank you for that. But the truth is, man, it's important to take inventory. It's important to find time for you. It's important to know who you are. It's important, like Joe mentioned, to remind yourself, I can do this. It's important to tell yourself, I am good enough. I can do this. I will do this. And when you get through it and when you look back, you realize, hey, you promised yourself you could and you didn't break that promise to yourself, right? And when things get hard and when things are difficult and when things are a struggle, which happens, right? Like Joe said, life is going to get in the way. It's going to get, what do? What do you pull from? So when you talk about self-respect or self-reflection, you talk about self-awareness, do you know you? Do you know who you are? Do you trust yourself, right? Joe, you heard me say this a couple of times, man. And if you're listening, Wounded Warrior team, family, brothers and sisters, trust yourself. Like Joe said, you've been through your worst days already. You survived your hardest moments, and now you have an opportunity to survive something else, to fight. And you know how to fight. You've shown yourself that. You know what's in you. There was something I heard this morning, Joel, that said, the fire inside me is brighter and stronger than the storms around me. Mm-hmm. And that's that fire that you've grown over the years, that you've adapted through all those wars. It's just been growing. So when things happen, pull it from in you. And you're strong enough. Trust yourself to know you're strong enough. Love yourself enough to know that no matter what happens, win or lose, guess what? You're still fighting. You're still in the game. You're still on the court. I can go to every sport. You're still in the ring, boxing. You're still on the track, running. You're still on the field, baseball. You're still here. You're still standing. And I'm so proud of each and every one of you that have taken these steps, that are listening in right now. And you know why you're listening? You know why you're hearing the tips that Joe threw at you and why you're listening to my long-winded self? It's because you want to stay in the fight. And you have opportunities. Tomorrow is yours. And whatever happened yesterday that you're upset about, whatever happened tonight that you want to do differently, guess what? You can be better than yesterday when you wake up. And that should always be your goal. You see that on my tagline on Facebook, right? Better than yesterday. So to the Air Force Wounded Warriors Wellness and Resiliency Team, I'm so proud of you. For the folks who just graduated from the wellness class last week, thank you for everything. Y'all did Tai Chi. Joe, it was pretty cool, man. Y'all did Tai Chi. You heard some great speakers. Y'all did some meditation drills. You were in there from 7 in the morning till 7 at night in some cases, right? And that's because you care, not just for the folks that were on that Zoom chat and those groups with you, but for yourself. So also another special shout out to Sven Perryman. I call him Sven. That's the name we've always called him since football. Hey, man, you're a warrior. You're a fighter. We're proud of you, man, and good to see you back on your feet. Everything we talked about today, self-reflection, self-care, right? Self-awareness, emotional intelligence. I'm going to keep chopping it up. And I'm going to keep having amazing folks like Joe come in and break some of these things down. I can do it every week, but when you got another perspective, see you pull that back, right? You got a different perspective. He's going to give you new tips. And I'm so excited. Joe, I'm hoping, this is our first time, guys. Hey, we didn't have any of this talked about. We just came in and came straight from the heart, straight from the gut. Joe, we're hoping to have you back, man.
Oh, my pleasure.
Hey.
Yeah, I'd love it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Thank you for the invite and really good conversation.
Thanks, brother. Is there anything, we got about 45 seconds left. Anything you want to throw out there to the front?
I mean, just echoing what you said a minute ago, particularly for those people who have been through adversity and challenges and maybe trauma, I think what's so important is that you continue to keep struggling. You not that you've been knocked down. That's not what's important, but that you get back up.
That's it.
And that each day you put one foot in front of the other, and each day you're striving to be a better version of yourself than you were the day before. So there's also very good, as a psychologist, I can't end without saying there's really good treatments out there as well.
Facts.
For folks with PTSD and trauma, and maybe we can talk about that another time.
Oh, yeah. We'll have Joe back on. We're going to talk about more. 78.6 FM. Peace.